Finally, here we are. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep. How about you? Can you?
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Look at this
Finally.
jacket squad. I think we're both wearing jackets. That means we're both taking it seriously, don't we?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
yeah, I've got to do a bit of apologizing. It took me unapologetically long to send you the link via Gmail. I forgot to remove the quotes and then I copied it incorrectly. So sorry for that.
Yeah, no, it's all good, man. How's my mic working? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's fine. It's great. Look at this beautiful Canadian flag in the room.
Cool.
Are you in the office?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear your own voice through my mic or anything?
Nope, I don't think. Nope,
Okay,
that's all right.
okay, cool.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, you could probably predict a couple of questions about the books behind you. I think we lost each other for a minute. Are we back?
Yeah, I think you're back now.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that you could probably predict a couple of questions about those books behind you. Do I sense a bit of fiction?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. So you're in the
yeah,
office, right?
yeah, that's right.
Mhm. Lovely. Well, I've got to inform you that I'm recording. So in case I do start the thing which we mentioned before, so-called channel, which I hope I will, by the way, I've already got a couple of videos for the channel. I will shortly inform you. I think it will be middle February. So
Okay, cool. Sounds good, man.
yeah,
Look forward to
yeah,
it.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
so
I
how's
feel.
things?
What's that? How are the
So
things?
how's things? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm smiling, I'm laughing. That's all right. That means then I keep the spirits present, so everything is supposedly good. I'm currently not at home, and I'm using a different laptop in a city where I stay right now. Is significantly safer. It's been surprisingly the safest city since the war started. So I'm having a little vacation, just enjoying the things a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
but pretty hectic and unpredictable, I'd say, because I keep reading the news about the region where I am initially. Kiev's been attacked today, as recently as today. I think one of the missiles was shot. I think I've seen the photo today, because that's what we keep seeing the photos of this thing being taken down after it happens. Yeah, when it just lands somewhere on a field, in a better case on a field.
Mm.
But sometimes it does land in a worse place, unfortunately,
Yeah,
sadly.
yeah, for sure. But happy to hear that you're safe, that your family's safe and everything.
Yeah, as much as it's possible currently, as much as it's possible. It feels like we should have talked way earlier. How long does the communication go back?
Yeah, man. Geez, we've been talking for a long time now, but
Yeah,
I guess this is our first video chat, eh?
yep, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. What doesn't it go back like a couple of years, like two? Would you say two, three?
yeah, about that. A couple years. That's right.
Couple of
Yeah,
years. Yeah, and we own the meet into the Xbox Reddit community.
that's right. Yeah, I think we initially. I want to think that we met on Instagram
You think
through
so?
a comment or something. I think it was in, or was it?
Must have been Reddit, where I asked a rather silly question about something regarding
I,
Xbox.
I think it was something like that. I think it was a comment
Mm,
that you made, and I replied to a comment,
huh,
and
yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, and then we
Was
kind
it
of
something about
exchanged.
Xbox?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then we initially exchanged gamer
yeah.
tags on Xbox,
Right. And I
and we
keep
started
seeing you
talking.
sometimes connecting there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you were when you first. Oh yeah, that's like because you were wondering about the Xbox One S, I think, and you were
for sure.
contemplating getting it, and I was
Oh,
like, oh,
yeah.
you should get it, man. It's a
Yeah. A
pretty good
total deal,
system,
right?
good machine.
Amazing bargain.
Yeah. And then you ended up getting it and playing Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yeah. I've been
Yeah.
rocking that thing. I've been really rocking that thing. You are the lucky owner of the latest model, as far as I remember.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Series S, not the highest one. Like there's two versions. There's like the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. But
Series
that's
S.
the
Interesting.
yeah.
Wasn't S a
But
bit older?
it's still next generation. It's still the next
Yeah.
generation machine. So what they've done with this new generation is they've made like a high end model and then like kind of like a lower end model. Actually, similar to like the Xbox One S that you have,
Mhm.
there's also the Xbox One X, which has like four times the amount of power.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a black box instead of a
Oh
white
yeah,
one.
that thing looking sexy for sure. I've seen a couple of photos. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
powerful
yeah,
thing right
yeah,
there.
yeah. So with the new generation, there's like the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S.
Would you think it's a fair estimation that the X1 is on absolute the frontier of all these consoles currently, and it kind of even beats
Oh yeah,
PlayStation, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. Microsoft. I don't know how much you read in tech news. I work in tech, so I also read a lot of tech news. But Microsoft, it almost seems like they're creating a video game monopoly because they've been buying a lot of gaming studios, and they what was it? It was like 2 years ago they bought Bethesda for like seven
Wow,
point
so that
something
company belongs to
billion
Microsoft
dollars.
now.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that's why like all the Bethesda games like Fallout and Skyrim are all on Microsoft Game Pass, and that is their intent. They want to buy all these studios so that they can then put their video games on their Xbox Game Pass and
Yeah,
get more subscribers. So it's
yeah,
uh I personally think this generation is going to go to Microsoft. The
mm,
previous generation between the Xbox One and the PlayStation, Sony PlayStation, I think did kind of go more towards the PlayStation. It
right.
was the more powerful machine. It
Yeah,
had
why do you
a
think
lot
that
more
is? Why do
exclusives.
you think PlayStation used to win that competition?
Um, Xbox didn't, I guess, made some mistakes with the Xbox One. When they first launched this thing, it was it looked like an old VCR, like the
Mhm.
VHS players.
Oh
It
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
looked
Too
like a black
primitive.
box. It didn't look very interesting or anything. But also where they went wrong was it came bundled with this device called the Microsoft Kinect, which
Hmm.
was basically a camera that could track your movements. And it made the console a little bit interesting, but it also increased the price like $150. So when both systems came out, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, the Xbox One was a lot more expensive than the PlayStation. Not only that, it was less powerful. So at the time, um, at the time it was GDDR5 video RAM or video memory was just coming out, and nobody really knew if it was going to be the next greatest thing or if um, the current video memory was going to be sufficient. So Sony kind of took a gamble and designed and engineered their PlayStation with this new GDDR5 video memory, whereas Microsoft and Xbox took an older approach and they installed just DDR3 RAM into their machine,
Hmm.
and um, the result was the PlayStation was just way more powerful than the Xbox. So a lot of games could run at a higher resolution. Not only that, it was cheaper, and
Hmm.
I mean, people love to get a good deal. People love
Yeah,
cheap things.
always.
So,
Yeah.
and that's anybody. That's me too. I love to find myself a good deal. I'm
Hmm.
gonna when it comes to video games, I'm usually gonna go with whatever the cheaper console is. Which in this generation, it was the Xbox Series S. Like, geez, I think I paid like $379 for that thing, Canadian dollars. So, that is a pretty sweet deal for a next generation machine. Like the higher end Xbox is selling for like $600, and the PlayStation 5 is selling for like $629 Canadian currency.
Obvious.
What's that?
Well, obvious. I said pretty obvious deal, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So like I'm usually gonna go with like the cheaper model. So
What's
anyway,
the
so
price
I'll
tag for
probably
that last X model? How much did you pay for it?
the one that I just got,
Yeah, the latest one.
379.
Oh, right, 379.
Canadian though. So
Uh-huh.
if that was an American, I think that would transfer to like 299 US dollars. So
Okay.
$300 US. So that's a pretty
The
good
box
deal.
does seem to be a bit does seem to have a little bit more popularity in the America rather than European market, which is mostly occupied or has been occupied with PlayStation. Why do you think that difference in terms of geographically?
Are you talking about this generation or the previous generation?
I think I would say previously, PlayStation used to be more obvious and noticeable in the European countries.
That's all over the world. The PlayStation
Yeah.
was just by far way more popular than the Xbox,
Mm,
and that's not just North America, Europe. That's in pretty much every country. When you compare units sold, the PlayStation just sold far more units than the Xbox, and I think the big problem was, um, again, the Xbox initially was more expensive, and it was the less powerful machine. Like while a lot of games for the PlayStation were running at 1080p. There's surprisingly, a lot of Xbox titles that were running at 720 to 900p. And I mean, most people probably wouldn't know a difference. I surely could notice a huge difference, but
mhm,
you
mhm.
know, so I think that's really what it comes down to.
Right. Well, yeah, undeniably you make an impression of a pretty intelligible in terms of being tech-savvy person. Where does this fascination come from? Is it mostly supported by the gaming obsession, if I may say so, or is it something else that feeds it, in case with you?
Um, like my like why I like to play video games, or like
I
why
mean,
I'm so
being
interested.
generally pretty well informed about the markets and the
So
details.
Oh yeah, so that's more along my background. Like I currently, I mean, as you know, I currently work in tech,
Mhm.
and working in tech, I like to, I guess, be informed of all the latest technologies that are coming out. So back when the PlayStation and the Xbox first came out, I did a lot of research on both of them to see which one I would kind of prefer,
How
and same
long
with
did
this
that
generation.
research take you? Because with me personally, it got to an unhealthy point where I barely slept, you know.
Oh, no, it didn't take me very long. Like I
Yeah.
just, for the PlayStation, I would just, Google search PlayStation 4 technical specifications, and it'll tell me what kind of CPU is in there, what kind of GPU is in there, and same with the Xbox. And I'll look at the two, and then I'll see, okay, yeah, the PlayStation is the more powerful machine, and same with this current generation. I looked at the specifications of both, and um, when it comes to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, they're they are pretty much on par with each other. Like the PlayStation might have some slight differences and it might be slightly more powerful, but they're relatively the same for this generation. The Xbox Series S is a lot underpowered compared to the other two consoles. So like the console that I have is underpowered. However, a lot of these consoles now are geared towards 4K gaming at like 120p or 120 frames per second or something like that. I
Well,
still game on a 1080p monitor, so
uh,
4K doesn't really matter to me. So that's why I went with the cheaper console because I just don't need the gaming horsepower that the higher end consoles have.
so
But
how
I
many
would
FPS are you
definitely.
getting with the current monitor?
What's that?
How many FPS are you getting with the current monitor? Like 60
It,
standard?
oh yeah, 60 easily.
Yeah,
And there's some games that enable you to go a little bit above 60.
yeah.
I believe there's some that will run like around 100 to 120. It all depends on the game. Like the new Call of Duty, I think you can put it in performance mode. And don't quote me on this. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can go into performance mode in the game, and you can get like 120 frames per second, even on the cheaper console.
Some people, however, would perhaps argue that the difference between maybe 60 or 80 and 120 is barely noticeable for the human eye. What would you say?
I would say you would notice it. It's
Yeah.
noticeable. However, it depends on if you have the screen for it. Like all of my monitors are still 60 hertz
Uh-huh.
panels, so even if the console is capable of 120 20 frames per second, you're actually not going to see it. And I would
Mhm.
say the majority of people are in the same boat. Those 4K 120 hertz or 100, I think they go up to like 140 hertz panels. They're they're still expensive. Like they're I don't know how much they cost these days, but last I checked, they were around $500. And when you compare that to something else that's half the price, again, I'm usually gonna I like a deal. I'm gonna go with whatever's a more affordable option.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, well, the difference between 30 and 60 is a big deal. Me, especially coming from a place where I started gaming on a terrible machine, and every time I got barely 60, 29, 25 was a big deal. Yeah, because 30 and 60 is a big
Oh
game
yeah.
changer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I think, yeah, once you get to 60, it's huge, but and anything under that,
Mhm.
yeah, like you'll notice
Oh,
differences, um,
undeniably, for sure.
for sure.
Instantly.
Yeah. But have you played any games on your Xbox that you felt were in the 20s?
Not in the 20s, luckily. Uh, in the 20s would be disastrous. I don't think I've run two new games. However, I'm expecting this Harry Potter inspired game that is just about to be released in February. I'm I suppose I'm gonna have certainly lots of issues with that because it's a pretty new one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it drops. It drops. Sometimes I do notice certain FPS being drastically dropped. Not in anything that would radically spoil the gaming experience, obviously, but it does drop, and it's pretty obvious. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
demand a lot of things from that One S model, to be honest. I'm pretty happy with where it is right now. What has
No,
been your worst gaming experience? Something that could barely run.
like ever.
Yeah, ever since you
Remember, like
started.
I also have a PC
Yeah.
that I game with too. So, geez, I would say my worst gaming experience. Honestly, I think now going back to the old generation, like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, um, I actually had the PlayStation 4 for the longest time, and I was
Yeah.
always a PlayStation guy. I eventually switched to the Xbox One, um, and that was only because I had friends who convinced me to switch.
Mhm.
And after I switched, now I bought the original Xbox. It was like the
Mhm.
VCR looking thing, not like the one that you have. The Xbox One S was a later version that they then overclocked and made a little bit faster.
Mhm.
But now, like the first Xbox that I bought was the original VCR looking friggin' thing. And I remember like I started playing games with some of the boys, and I can't remember which game it was, but there was a couple games there where it was rendering at like the image just looked really blurry to me,
Mhm.
and I was kind of complaining to the guys. I'm like, man, this looks terrible. Like,
Yeah.
we're like, why don't we play something else, man? Why does it look like this? It didn't look like this on my PlayStation. And then
Yeah.
I did some Google searching. I did some
Mhm.
searching, and I can't recall the game, but essentially the game was running at 720p for the most part, and at
Uh-huh.
times would upscale to 900. And me, I could notice a huge difference, and it was so irritating to me.
Yeah.
And
Certain
so
objects perhaps may not even appear. You would probably be experience
actually,
a lot
I'll
of
say my,
obstacles.
my worst gaming experience was probably, and I've been gaming for a long time. I'm 37 years old. I've been gaming since my first gaming console was the very first PlayStation 1 back in the 90s. But probably my worst gaming experience was PUBG on the Xbox. You know,
Mm.
PUBG.
Yes, sure. Yeah, everybody
It's like
does.
a battle royale type
Right,
type
right.
game, but I played it on PC quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. And then um, on the PC, it got to a point where people were so good that I
Mhm.
just couldn't compete anymore. So,
Mhm.
like, I'm a working professional. I don't spend a lot of time on video games,
Mhm.
so I don't have the time to like hone my skills and get
That's
really
not
good
the
at
kind
this
of sacrifice
certain
people are
video
ready to
game.
make, right? That's just irrational.
No, exactly. So, anyways, when PUBG first came out on the PC, it was good. Like, I was getting lots of kills, and I would even like win some matches, and it was a lot of fun. But But then it eventually got to like once it started getting popular and everybody started playing it, people started getting really good. And like I'd have like a 10-year-old kid that would just like school me.
Yep.
And
Yep. Who
it
joined
was getting
yesterday, right?
it got so difficult for me. So I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not playing this game anymore.
Ah,
And then I
oh,
seen that it came
interesting.
out for the Xbox. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna see what it's like on the Xbox. So I tried to run it on the Xbox, like the old original Xbox, and it looked like complete garbage. Like
Wow.
you'd parachute into a place, and like the buildings weren't even loaded. They would just look like
Wow.
these
Yeah.
blocks of crap. It was
Yeah. You gotta
yeah, it
take
was
the
pretty
risk.
bad.
You don't know where you landed.
Yeah, exactly. It was, yeah, that was probably the worst I've seen when it comes to video games. And what's interesting these days is there's so many video games that are released that have so many problems. And a lot of people will tell you the same thing. People will complain, oh, this game is broken, or this game is broken, or,
Not taking into
whatnot. But
consideration the optimization, right?
yeah, exactly. But so it seems like a lot of developers are releasing some of these titles without it being fully optimized. Whereas, like back in the 90s and 2000s, back in the days of the Sony PlayStation 1, the Nintendo 360, the PlayStation 2, when a game came out, it was it was good to go. There was no issues with it at all. Now, I mean, I guess we didn't have online
Comparison.
connectivity and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but I don't know.
Why do you think that? Why do you think such a difference in terms of how game developers approached games back in the days? Is it a competition or being in a hurry or anything?
So I've done some reading on this, not like specifically this, but apparently when it comes to developers and game developers specifically, some of them are under a lot of pressure, and especially when it comes up to like the final weeks of the game being launched, apparently these developers are under a lot of pressure. They're working very, very long hours, and maybe it's just the stress. And I think people higher than the developers are kind of demanding this game to be released at a certain day when all the developers know it's not being ready. Actually, the biggest disaster, Cyberpunk
I
2077.
was just gonna say that. I was just gonna bring that example. I've not
It's
personally played it. Have you?
oh yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a great game. I actually love the
Mm,
game. The
yeah.
story is incredibly captivating. I love it, but I'll admit it had a lot of bugs when it initially came out. And when I first started playing it, it was on the machine that you have, the Xbox One S,
Yeah. How did it
and
run?
it was bad. It was bad.
Really?
It was running at like maybe 20 something frames per second, and it
I'm
looked
not
like
even
it
gonna
was
buy it.
oh,
Yeah.
it was bad. It was bad. And like I think the video resolution was anywhere between like 720 to 900p. It was bad.
Now, are you
And
saying it was bad because it was poorly optimized, or do you think this machine is just highly inappropriate for the game like that?
a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Definitely. The machine, the Xbox, actually, I was blown away that the first
Yeah.
Xbox
That's a
could even
miracle
run
already.
because that's an old machine. Remember, that came out in 2013. That was a long time ago, man.
It
So,
doesn't feel like that though. To me, I'm still in my gaming perception. I'm kind of stuck in 15, 13. Yeah, I'm forgetting it's been 10 years now.
yeah, it's pretty crazy actually. But yeah, like the Xbox was really underpowered for something like this, but they still got it to run. I believe now that it can actually run at a steady 30 frames per second.
Oh, that's good.
So it was a little bit of both. A little bit of it needed a bit of optimizations,
Yeah.
and the Xbox is underpowered. But I mean, right now it can run just fine.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah. I was gonna cancel on that permanently as soon as you said it's a disastrous experience. I was like, yep, well, that's out of my list now.
I would, I would, so I would look at some YouTube videos, look
Yeah.
at some
Hmm.
gameplay footage on
Yeah.
YouTube just to see what it's like.
That's
There's
what I
actually
always
all
do.
kinds of YouTubers. Yeah, yeah, me too. There's all kinds of YouTubers that have covered the performance of this game
Uh-huh.
on like pretty
Comparison.
much every single release of and every single update of the game to see and compare really how it's performed over time. And from my understanding, I believe they have it at a pretty stable 30 frames per second. And I will say that it is one of the more interesting and captivating stories that that I'll that I've seen in a long time.
Mm,
Be aware though, if you put this video of us right now on YouTube,
mhm.
people will probably shit all over us for saying that,
Really?
or for me saying
For
that.
saying that the story is captivating?
Yeah, because people love it's like it almost became a trending thing. People loved to hate on Cyberpunk 2077. Like as soon as people started talking about the bugs and problems, people
Uh,
just crapped all over the
yeah, it
game. And
just
actually,
piled.
yeah, exactly. It just
Hmm.
kept on going. It almost created
Yeah,
like
I
a
don't think
snowball.
we're gonna receive a lot of hate. I don't think we're gonna receive a lot of shit. If we do, it's gonna be complimentary to me. That means somebody's watched this video. Man, this video is gonna have 10 views. 9 of them are just friends,
Yeah,
yours,
probably,
mine, right?
probably.
So I think we're
Yeah,
safe. I think we're safe. Not a lot of shit coming our way.
that's true.
It feels like also the problem with the optimization of a lot of modern games, at least partly, depends on this instant ability of basically of the internet to deliver anything right within a minute. Because previously, I imagine developers didn't have such an opportunity. You make it out, it's on the market, it's out now. There's pretty much nothing you can do. So it better be good, right? It better be optimized and improved as
Yeah,
much as it
that's true.
can.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, interesting. That is interesting. So it's interesting considering also your current occupation. I might struggle to professionally in precision to describe what exactly you currently do, but if my memory serves, it's something about helicopters. Am I getting too far?
Yeah. Now you're right on the money there.
Yeah.
Um, so well, I mean, I don't know if I want to put this all over YouTube,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I'm not going to go into too much detail,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I will say that I work for CAE, which is a Canadian company. It stands for Canadian Aviation Electronics. Essentially, the company designs, engineers, and builds multi-million dollar flight simulators for governments, for airlines, and organizations like that, really all across the globe. Now, there's a few sectors to the company. There is healthcare, which is only really a small portion of the company. There is civil aviation, and then defense and security. And I currently work in the defense and security sector,
Mhm.
but that's all I'm going to disclose
Yeah,
on
sure. Right, right.
this
Yeah,
video.
sure. We're not getting there, definitely. I should have been a bit more prepared in terms of what question I'm going to bombard you with, obviously, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's all good,
yeah.
man. It's all good.
I'd love, however, to extend the conversation about your military background a little bit, if you're okay talking about that, because that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, of
I've been
course.
obsessed with listening to military people, ex-military people. I honestly have no idea why you still hadn't started previously your own podcast, of which I've reminded you a couple of times. And you said you are not particularly into listening, something like that. Are you not into generally listening to military stories, or not into listening to public military stories?
It's that I'm not interested. Not that I'm not interested. I just haven't, I guess, had the time to listen to podcasts. I've
Yeah,
never
right.
really jumped on the podcast wagon thing. I remember it was only a few years ago that my daughter was listening to a podcast as she was going to sleep, and I didn't even know what she was listening to. I kind of put one of the
Mhm.
earbuds on, and I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" And she goes,
Hmm.
"Oh, it's a podcast." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"What the hell is a podcast?
yeah. What's
What do you
that,
mean?" She's
right?
like, "Oh, just people talk." And I'm like, "What? So you just listen to
Yeah,
people talk?"
wild
She's
that
like,
people are actually making money off of it, right?
"Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, kind of like the radio, but they don't play music. You just listen to discussions." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Okay, all
that's
right.
the thing,
Well,
obviously, right? People are
enjoy
doing
your
it.
podcast."
You remember
So
what that was? Any chances of you recollecting what kind of episode it was? She was
I
listening.
have no idea. That
Yeah,
was yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
right.
No idea what she listens to.
Hmm. Hmm.
But anyways,
Yeah,
you asked about my military career.
right.
So I initially got in the military in 2003. Now I joined
Yeah.
what's called the Army Reserve, which is similar. If you're more familiar with, for example, like U.S. forces,
Uh
it's like
huh.
the United States National Guard. It's
Uh
like
huh.
part-time soldiers.
Yeah.
And then I had a civilian daytime job. So 2003, I joined the reserves. And then in 2007,
What I'm sorry for interrupting, but that kind of
yeah,
makes the point. So, what was the initiative, though? The initial force to it? What pushed you towards
oh
making a
man, I
decision?
always wanted to be a soldier when I was a kid.
You did.
Ever
And
since
prior
I
to
was,
joining that, no experience into anything like that whatsoever, right?
um, I tried cadets for like a year when I was maybe 12 or 13. I
Uh-huh.
think maybe 13. I tried cadets. I mean, cadets is nothing like the actual military, but that was really my only exposure to something. So I didn't really know like much. I mean, I know what most civilian people would have known.
Hmm.
See the
Yeah,
television, see the
yeah.
news and stuff like
What
that.
pretty much I currently know.
Yeah, so like you would know a lot more back because back then when I was a kid, we didn't have, cell phones
Hmm.
and all this other stuff. Like the news that I got was in the form of a newspaper that I would
Hmm.
read or something and see pictures of soldiers and whatnot. Or, if I was watching my parents were watching the news or something, I'd see maybe something briefly come up. But I mean, like these days with technology, you see it everywhere, especially the war that's going on in Ukraine. You
Hmm.
see it all over the place.
Hmm.
So I think generally people have a way better understanding now of what's going on, which I think is I mean, I think it's a positive thing. War is not a good thing, but I think
Hmm.
it's positive
The
that
exposure
people
is right.
know what's going on because when we were in Afghanistan, my first tour was in 2007, and it was a combat tour. Our job was to seek out, neutralize, or destroy any kind of threat from the Taliban or Al Qaeda. And back home in Canada, people had no idea what the hell we were doing in Afghanistan. A lot of Canadians thought we were actually still peacekeeping in
Hmm.
Afghanistan. It was pretty
Hmm.
wild. And then when soldiers started passing away, then a lot of Canadians were like, "Oh, what the hell's going on here? Like,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
seems like more of a peacekeeping operation." Now, I don't know if the Canadian government did that on purpose,
Hmm.
but it seemed like the American population had a way better understanding of what was going on um, than the Canadian population.
Hmm.
Like, so at the time, my daytime job, I worked for CATSA, which is the Canadian Aviation Screening Authority. So pre-board screeners, that was my civilian daytime job. And then my part-time job was the Army Reserve. Um, and a lot of Canadians, again, like thought we were peacekeeping, but whenever I came across an American and an American, found out from somebody else or whatever that I went to Afghanistan, they would shake my hand. They'd be like, "Oh, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for what you did." Whereas I wouldn't really get a whole lot of acknowledgement from a lot of Canadians. It was so bizarre, and I think that's just the American media helps the Americans understand more what's going on. Like in Afghanistan, I mean, in the Canadian media, anyways, you only ever see when a Canadian soldier passes away. And 9 times out of 10, it was from an IED, improvised explosive device. And you wouldn't hear about the firefights, you wouldn't hear about the combat or anything. So actually, when I went to Afghanistan, the first time I was shot at, I'll be honest with you, I was surprised because I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting into. Um, because in the media you only hear about IEDs going off and stuff like that. You don't hear about the firefights, about like, the raids that we conduct on IED compounds or factories or camps and stuff like that. So, anyways, getting a little bit ahead of myself.
No, no,
Um,
it's interesting, and I don't think we ever brought that up in our conversations, in our chats, right? The
yeah,
fact that because that thing was pretty securely sealed by the government or whatever because of the lack of outlets, how it was dangerous first and foremost for the soldiers, most importantly, and
yeah.
how
I
those.
don't think the government. I don't think the government did it purposely. I don't think they
Yeah.
were trying to hide anything. I think just our media just didn't know what was going on, and part of that is probably because of us. And
Hmm.
during that combat tour in 2007, There was, I think, a day or two, might have been just a day, but could have been a period of 2 days where we
Mhm.
actually had a news crew with us, and my section specifically was tasked with the direct protection of that. It was just a journalist and her cameraman, and they had these blue frag vests that said press on them and these blue helmets and stuff. Probably, I mean, you probably would have seen something similar
Sure.
in
Yeah, lately
Ukraine.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And um, there was one day where our guys, then we were doing a what we call a presence patrol, and what we do is an advance to contact. So we'll just kind of patrol this area that we know might be held by the Taliban, or there might be Taliban in there, and we'll just kind of advance until we come under contact, and then we'll deal with the threat, whatever that may be. And as soon as the guys came under contact, and we were kind of back a little bit from the main group because we were protecting the civilians, the
Mhm.
which is the press, and then we could hear off in the distance explosions and gunfire and whatnot. And actually, the journalist was getting really upset with us because she wanted us to take her forward, and then we were like, no, like our job is to keep
Yeah.
you safe, our job is to protect you. If we take you into the firefight and
Yeah.
bullets are flying, we can no longer guarantee your safety.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so she was, and these were Canadian journalists, so she was a little bit pissed off
Hmm.
because we weren't taking her forward.
Some of
But
the press representatives might definitely be a bit out of reality in terms of how situation really is. Now, being considering that currently the situation is different, not least due to the internet, do you think that generally tends to have a rather positive effect on people's mindset towards military and war, or do you think it's also played? Um, how would you treat it in terms of the effect on
so
society,
that
the exposure?
I think that can go either way. So I think it's good that the people know what's going on. Especially this side of the world. Like there is a war going on in Ukraine. People are dying every day. We have to do everything we absolutely can to help Ukraine, to help the people, and to help the armed forces stand up for their freedom and defend themselves against the invaders. So it's good in a sense where it shows Westerners, especially civilian Westerners, what war is actually like. Um, like I had a friend who shared a video that really like broke my heart. And it was the first day of the invasion. A woman is looking outside, and you see this Russian jet coming in from a distance, and then it fires a couple rockets. One of the rockets hits the apartment, and then you can hear a couple kids screaming in the background. And she cuts out the video shortly after that. And the video was hard to watch, um, but I think those things need to be seen, especially by Westerners, um, so that we know and that civilians here know what's going on, and that Ukraine still needs help. They still need all the support they can get, and um, because I think a lot of Westerners, especially civilians, if they didn't see stuff like that, they would have no conception whatsoever what war was actually like.
Lots of detachment, right? Even more detachment.
Lots of detachment,
Yeah.
so much detachment, and generally, especially here in Canada, um, a lot of people kind of, and even like my spouse is actually from Venezuela. She said this to me as well. People here seem very, very disconnected from the rest of the world. We kind of like live in our own little safety bubble where people here think that really nothing can happen to us, that we're in, you know, nothing would ever happen here and things like that.
Well,
So
that's
because of
not
that,
an uncommon perception of a lot of people.
yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say of developed countries. I don't know, at least in fairly developed countries, that was even partly what was happening in my country prior to the full-fledged
hmm
escalation. So I don't think you guys, yeah, it's not something totally new.
yeah. So, just a question: Are you going to edit this video, like cut out certain parts and whatnot?
No, just as we're recording currently, unless you request me to, if we need
Okay.
to
I
cut
just got to
something
turn the heat
out.
on. It's getting cold in the basement.
Yeah, oh no, you could. Yeah, absolutely, you can do
Just
it,
give me
sure.
one sec.
Yep, sure. Yeah, what I am going to do, however, is to do my best to boost up the quality of the volume a little bit, because I was going to use my fancy microphone that I boasted left and right, as you remember, on Instagram, of which I'm pretty
Yeah,
proud.
yeah, that was a. It looked like you had a pretty nice setup there, but this looks a little bit different.
Yeah, currently I'm in another place for sure, and that was a little bit off the
Oh,
cuff.
right,
But
yeah,
again, I couldn't miss the opportunity. We're pretty privileged. We have electricity in this place almost permanently, so I thought, shit, we gotta do it. Why not?
yeah.
Definitely gotta do it.
So, like,
Uh,
where you're at right now, are you
it's a little bit
you still relatively
towards,
safe?
yeah, it's towards, it's a bit more western region, which has been less touched. Yeah, I guess strangely been less touched than the central region where I permanently am based. So I moved for a couple of days, trying to get away from the daily routine. I guess,
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
get on a little bit of relax, and it's cool. It's so good.
But
It's
yeah,
so good.
like back to the conversation. So like a lot of people here just seem very disconnected with what goes on in the rest of the world, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in in South America. People here just they don't realize what's actually going on. So I think it's good that some of the footage of what's going on in Ukraine is getting out because
Mhm.
people need to know what's going on, and um, now generally like NATO countries, when we go to war, um, we are very careful with who we shoot at, or and if there's any chance of collateral damage, any chance of civilian casualties, we will always we won't engage. We'll do whatever we can to minimize civilian
Mhm.
casualties. The Russians obviously don't seem to give a shit.
Mhm.
And actually,
Mhm.
I think I need to watch my language, otherwise YouTube might flag you and take it
Yeah,
down.
I should have. I don't think I've already, I've lost that one. I think I've recorded a couple of videos, which included a
You,
couple of,
yeah, you might have to edit that out because I
yeah.
think if somebody reports it or if YouTube
Uh-huh.
picks it up, I think they'll
I
take down the video.
might have read somewhere that if there's no explicit language in like first minute or something, if you don't go
Yeah,
directly in saying whatever you want. Yeah, but otherwise, but you know what? Listen, I do not hold it too dearly. I want to be what I am, and I want my guests to be what they are. So I think we're free to say whatever we want to.
yeah, I suppose okay. But anyways, yeah. So I guess it's it's good and it's bad. But I think it does more good
Mhm,
having footage like that released because people need to know what's going. Oh yeah, I was talking about Russia. Russia seems to fire indiscriminately. Actually,
mhm.
especially now, they seem to be purposely targeting civilian, from my understanding,
Yes.
targeting civilian infrastructure, to kind of like demoralize the
Mhm,
population.
mhm,
And that is something that, from a NATO country, we would never do, never even think
mhm,
about. Like um, it's we follow something called the rules of armed conflict and the Geneva Convention. And
mhm.
these are, it's a set of rules that are set out that tells us what we can and can't do. And, geez, you can't target civilians. You can't
Well, they
target
just don't
civilians.
do not obey by any international agreements or anything of that kind. They pretty much dictate whatever they want to do for themselves. So there's nothing that they obey to.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's important that the rest of the world sees what the Russian government is actually like and what they're actually doing so that we can help put a stop to it. So,
Totally. And luckily for us, for Ukraine, Canada has been in probably top five of the most supporting, uh, efficient in terms of help countries, of which I'm personally truly grateful to you for checking on me all the time, and to your country. Now, let me ask you something from the stance of, let's say, as a Ukrainian to a Canadian. Now, you having the standard and general and humane stance on the events, and you being through the war, you understanding first, let's say, to use our gaming vocabulary, first person, what it feels like to be in a war. Do you have to interact sometimes with people in your place who tend to have a different stance and view on the political and military conflict between Russia and Ukraine? How often there is, if any?
Like in the current war in Ukraine?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So
Any
I have
opinions and views that would drastically differ from yours?
so I haven't, yes. So I haven't directly interacted with people, but I have seen people on social media speak out against against the amount of support that
Hmm.
you know that
Hmm.
we're giving to Ukraine. I
Of
mean,
your people of your country, or of Americans, perhaps?
both
Yeah.
actually,
Hmm.
both. Now it's a small minority. Most will support it,
Hmm.
but I have seen some that don't believe we should be offering the assistance. But I mean, I still do work for the government,
Hmm.
and I'm still kind of contract to work for the government, so I can't engage into a lot of talk on social media
Hmm.
with certain things. I can say my point of view, but you know, I'm not one that's going to argue with somebody on social media
Right.
because people
Pointless.
have lost jobs because of
Hmm.
what they've said on social media. So
Hmm.
um,
And in
yeah,
perspective of offline, would you say there have happened cases where you would bump into a person who would have a completely different stance?
no, not offline. I haven't
Yeah.
actually personally met anybody like in person, but a lot of those conversations um, have never really come up. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
like I'm gonna go up to a complete stranger and be like, "Hey, what
Yeah,
do you think
that's
of the
not
war in Ukraine?"
yeah. Right, right, right. That's not like a
You
weather
know what I mean?
topic.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking because every time reading a comments section on Instagram below one of those political posts of any famous people, anybody like that, I am sad to come across lots of people. But maybe that's just selective view, because you see, judging about the popularity based on its comments probably is unfair business. But judging by this selective view, it appears that a lot of people, especially in the USA, do not quite realize the importance of this support, this massive, obviously, support provided for my country. And it kind of grieves me, it saddens me, but at the same time, I could probably get behind their logic a little bit. But it's also a matter of, the states being perhaps in top three most supporting and efficient country in terms of support. If these guys, and I wonder, yeah, perhaps some people from the states are going to watch it, maybe if the video gets through somebody. If you guys claim yourself to be like often coming out of a mouth of an American, how they claim to be the country of the dream and the opportunity country and almost the best country in the world, you claim yourself to be a country like that, and you do not stand out for the democracy and the rights and fairness. Is just, there's no country that deserves to be called the most democratic country, whether it is or it isn't truth, in fact, and being totally aside. And by the way, here's the beautiful opportunity to finally take this bully down, right? I mean, you don't even have to directly participate, just provide us with all the necessity. We will get our hands bloody. You see, it's us who die and sacrifice and lose all the time. You just have to facilitate it to the best
Hmm.
of your ability, and that's it, and the thing will be done. Yeah, but perhaps, do you think the opinion of the civil segment, I mean, of the civilians, do you think it should be drastically considered by the government, or do you believe that the government has got their own mind and they should know what they do and do not let the public,
I mean, you know,
intertwine?
the beauty of a democracy is we voted in our leaders. You know what I mean? So in our case, Justin Trudeau was voted in by the majority of Canadians. Joe Biden voted in by the
Yeah.
majority of Americans. So, um, you know, like we can't, you know, when it comes to, for example, supporting Ukraine, we can't do a vote and see, okay, how many Canadians uh, vote for this? How many Canadians vote against it? There's no time. You know, they
Mhm.
need the support a year
True.
ago. You know, you guys need the weapons a year ago.
Yeah.
You need the training a year ago. So I think it's safe to say that because of a democracy, because our officials are elected by the majority, they're going to do things that the majority of Canadians would agree on.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think that's fair to
Certain things
say.
should be delegated exclusively to government, at least during the
Now,
period.
now in Canada, because we're part of the Commonwealth, we have Parliament. So, for example, if our Prime Minister decides something, it's not like this happens. It usually goes to Parliament, it's discussed, and these things are talked about a lot before a final decision is made on whether we're sending weapons and whatnot. And oh, and you asked me about if I did come in contact with somebody who was in support of the support that we give. Actually, I lied. I have come across one person that did not agree with the support. Um, Now, this, I'm not going to say where I ran into them or who this person is, of course, but it's not that they're not in support of supporting Ukraine. It's it seems like, from my understanding, it seemed like their mindset was, by us giving Ukraine more
You
weapons.
compromise your own country.
Not that.
No.
That's not what he came from. We're giving them the ability to kill more people.
So
So
sort of a
that's the way
pacifistic
that this person
stance.
was looking at it, and he
Mhm,
was like, "No, I don't agree with this because we're enabling them to, to kill more people. We're enabling them to, to be in this
to
war
survive.
for longer
Yeah.
and whatnot." And I kind of said to him, I'm like, "Okay, so you think that Russia should be able to do whatever they want? They should be able to invade whoever they want and
Mhm,
take over?" And
mhm,
then he was like, "Well,
mhm,
no." I'm like,
mhm,
"Well, exactly.
mhm,
Like, you know, this, this has to be stopped.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
he needs to know that he can't just do this."
And there will be repercussion, and you got to be careful who you mess with sometimes. Because, yeah, right. Well, it appears to be a very pacifistic approach towards the war, and I have had that as well, saying something
Mhm.
that, but yeah, sponsoring the war. That's a common argument that a lot of
Yes.
Americans
Yeah.
put on,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
sponsoring the
So,
war.
I mean, like, I can understand, their point of view, but at the same time, we can't just allow a country like Russia to just take over whoever the hell they want. Next thing we know, they're going to be, what's going to happen next? And it's not like this
Oh,
is
they
the
got a
first
couple
time.
of countries on the list.
Oh, for
If
sure.
they're done with
Yeah,
us, they won't stop.
absolutely. If they took over Ukraine,
Mhm,
definitely there's going to be they're going to keep on going. I mean, it'll probably take hundreds of years,
mhm,
but they're
mhm,
not going to stop there.
mhm.
So something has to be done.
Sure, correct, absolutely. Something has to be done. I usually keep hearing the disappointment argument in terms of how much support has been dedicated to us from not the poorest people of certain countries. That's another thing that I've noticed. Those people who keep complaining about how much money is sent over the sea, which is initially the tax money, do not appear to be the poorest people, do not appear to be anyhow affected by the tax. If it comes out of a big influencer somewhere on YouTube or on Instagram from America who speaks about, who complains about taxes, I don't think he loses his food from the table, right? And for other
No,
countries, it can be literally a
no.
matter of life and death, right?
We typically, like, in for Canada anyways, we typically do donate billions of dollars every year to, a lot of African countries and, places around the world who, depending on what's going on. So we're just allotting. I mean, I don't work directly for the government. I don't see the numbers. I don't see where money comes in and goes out. But um, I think we're more than well equipped to be able
Mhm,
to offer the support that Ukraine needs. And I mean,
mhm.
with the entire alliance donating, um, you know what I mean? It's a good thing. It's a positive thing, and it needs to. I hope it keeps on going. I mean, as you've seen, Germany just gave the
Mhm,
okay to
mhm,
send over a whole bunch of Leopard tanks.
mhm,
Now, I'm not sure how much you know about this, but now the tanks that we use in Canada are Leopard tanks, the Leopard 2s.
mhm,
We bought them from Germany, a company called Rheinmetall that makes them. And Germany actually has power over these tanks on who they can be sold to and where they can go. So um, there was a little bit of hesitation on Germany to
Yep.
give the green light to send these to Ukraine.
Which attracted lots of attention, yeah, for them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that is. The only thing that I can think of is now that is our main battle tank. Like the Leopard 2 is our main battle tank to defend our country. So the only thing that I can think of why they were so hesitant is okay, if we start deploying those to Ukraine, now Russia is going to have the ability to go to have a direct conflict with this tank. Right
Mhm,
now, Russia has no idea how to defeat this tank,
mhm,
and these tanks are probably going to take them by surprise, and Ukraine's probably going to do very well. And but eventually, Russia is going to be able to develop a weapon that will penetrate the
Ah,
armor,
okay, so that's
and
the argument against.
they'll be able to, and if they say capture some of these tanks, they'll be able to study it, they'll be able to, find some weak points in the armor,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
then develop a weapon to exploit that weakness so that if we do go to war,
mhm.
then maybe
You
our
got it.
Leopard 2s won't be as efficient when we officially go to war.
Mhm.
That's the only thing that I don't know if that is the
No, I
reason
think
why.
it is. I think by far it's the best explanation of their
It's
why they
it's the
hesitate.
only thing that I could think of because I was thinking about it the other night and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And then I said, oh, you know what? I guess. And they're also, from the beginning, we've always been worried about corruption in Ukraine.
Mhm,
Um, I mean, NATO has always been worried about that, and that's why the membership has, taken a long time.
mhm,
That and they're currently in a war. I think to become a NATO member, I think you can't be at war when you become a
mhm.
member. But anyways, that was the only thing that I could really come up with that why Germany was so hesitant. But eventually, they
We've
gained
kept
they
hearing,
gained.
yeah, I mean, it was just we kept hearing some sort of politically correct argument from official representatives, which meant nothing, pretty much nothing. But the current explanation that you provided seems. But isn't it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the technology behind those tanks so exclusive and unrepeatable that it's so top secret for other countries?
Yes and no. I would say, yeah, like it's definitely there's certain aspects about it that are going to be top secret. Um, but a lot of the information you can find a lot of information on a simple Google search.
Right.
I mean, you won't be able to find out maybe how thick the armor is and things like that, but you'll be able to probably find pictures of the interior, and you'll be able to, find out information about its armament. What kind of main cannon it has, what kind of coax machine gun it has, what kind of pintle it has, which is the machine gun that they carry up top for the crew commander. Um, things like that. So,
Mhm, mhm.
but yeah, I mean,
As
like,
recently as today, I entertain myself by accidentally. I don't know if that screenshot or picture of a textbook is legit or not, but there was some sort of a bit of information that came supposedly out of a Russian military textbook or something like that, where a soldier was portrayed holding a shovel, and it read something like "hit a leopard in the right place with a shovel." And there was like a picture of the tank with some red zones, which is like the weakest, obviously implying that the soldier could take that tank down with a shovel. I don't know if anybody, yeah,
propaganda. That's what that
yeah,
is.
yeah, perhaps.
It's definitely propaganda. It's the Leopard 2. From my understanding, it's one of the most capable tanks in the world right now. Even compared to the Abrams. Abrams is still a great tank, but we always conduct these um, international competitions, and
Mhm.
even here at CFB Gagetown, we've conducted these international competitions, and our own Canadian Leopard 2s win a lot of these competitions. I mean, maybe part of that is training. I don't know. You know, my military background, I was an infantry soldier. I wasn't a tanker. But I do know that the our Canadian Leopard 2s do win a lot of these international competitions. Um, yeah, maybe part of it is the crew, their proficiency, but
Mhm.
another big part of it is the crew, or sorry, is the tank itself. It's a great piece
Mhm.
of kit. It's a it's a great weapon.
You, as you were also talking about the lack of any other reasonable explanation behind the hesitancy of certain countries, this thing which you've explained did come off as a reasonable and possible explanation. How would you also include, however, I don't know, a simple element of fear behind certain countries? Do you include that in equation? Simple fear.
Um, maybe as in like you think maybe Germany might be a little bit afraid because if they give the okay, then maybe Russia will look at ways on targeting them.
Which
Do
they've
you think
already
something
done
like
so. Yeah, the official representatives have dropped some Twitter messages saying that now Germany has officially stepped in and participated. Yeah. Do you think they could have been playing a part in case of these German leaders?
that? I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I wouldn't think because I mean, if Russia then decided to strike Germany, we're at
Yeah,
war. And
yeah,
all of
right.
NATO's at war, and there's no way that Russia can win a war against NATO, like a full-fledged war. There's no way. They don't have the capability. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
then again,
so
like Germany is a lot closer to Russia than, so we are in Canada or
right.
the Americans. So
Yeah,
I mean, maybe there was some fear. I
yeah,
really,
yeah.
I don't know. Possibly.
Right, to do at least 1 hour with each of my guests. We do, however, have to get back to it as soon as I think I'm privileged with the electricity stability, and when you can allow me a little bit of time, maybe an hour more, because I would really love to get into your military background
Yeah, for
previously.
sure. Of course,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, of course.
The mindset behind it would be most certainly what I would be interested in, and the experience
Mhm.
overall. Because I guess, yeah, I'd be surprised to know that people do not long for something like that, and I'm truly sure that you do have something to present to people. Um, yeah, well, I think for the first time that would do. Would you say?
Yeah, yes, sounds
Yeah,
good. Next time, I want to ask you some questions
right.
because I think you're wrong about me. I think people would be more interested
Yeah.
to hear what you would have to say.
Uh-huh.
Um,
You still
so
haven't
any
shifted your opinion about starting your own thing. I guess I will not stop asking you this question until you actually do run something of your
oh,
own.
like my own
Yep,
podcast or something.
yep.
I don't know. I don't know if it's for me.
Struggling with time, I think, most importantly, right? I think if you were privileged with a bit of more time, you would consider it.
I think I see. I've never jumped on the podcast
Yeah.
bandwagon. I don't even listen to podcasts. Probably if I listened more, um, I just have never had a lot of interest, but probably because I've never listened to podcasts. Um,
And on a second thought, as you're speaking about it, I do believe also that not everybody should get into that. We've got way too many things of this kind out there right now. Like I was trying to get us one potential guest that didn't work out, and he said the reason against doing a podcast whatsoever was because yeah, we were going to have a simple, like a friendly rant about some common interest. He said that when he gets with his friends and they start talking about films or something like that, then somebody usually has an idea of starting a podcast just to record the conversation. And the other friend said that there are way too many men who are rambling about something and put it out on the internet. So perhaps we don't really need a couple of more of people like that. So yeah,
yeah, I mean, just like anything, everything becomes very competitive.
mhm,
YouTube, you know what I mean?
yeah.
There's so many people that wanna go viral on YouTube, social media, and stuff
Want to
like
make a
that.
lot of money. It's interesting how these days people
Yeah,
go on YouTube mostly to make money, not because of some inner forces and desires and ideas, but because to make money. Have you ever looked into this trend with YouTube Shorts that's happening right now with people?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
It's so competitive though. Like you really have to. Even like my own brother wanted to become a YouTuber, and
Mm,
he seemed to think that he could start a YouTube channel, start recording himself playing video games, and start
mhm.
making lots of money.
Well,
And
there
I'm
goes
like,
my
man,
plan. There goes my plan.
I was like, man, it's not like that. Like things are so competitive, and
Yeah.
he didn't really understand, what I meant. But and then I just did some Google searching just to see how much they start paying, and I'm like, okay, me, for example, like with my income, my current income, for me to make as much as I make right now, on YouTube, I have to generate, geez, it was something, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like 3 or 4 million views
Yeah, you said
in
something like
every
that in a
24
week.
hours,
Oh, 24 hours. That's already.
every day.
What the hell are you
So
supposed to record out there?
exactly, like that would only work if you're already famous. And
Yeah.
so the thing is, the guys that are already YouTubers that are making lots of money, it's easy for them because people are subscribed to them. So as soon as they drop a video, geez, within a day, it'll have 1 million views.
Don't you also think, however, that judging, I've caught myself having the same thought, totally the same thought, how I judge about an activity, a potentially new activity, in comparison to my hourly payment. So I adopted this logic thinking, okay, if I play 2 hours of a game, how much would that cost me? And I kind of give up on the game, which would otherwise be amazing. Maybe I shouldn't have, right? So sometimes I think to myself that maybe it's not the best decision to rate everything in hourly or weekly or monthly payment because that would prevent us from starting something.
Probably.
Yeah, yeah, that's another view to it. But then somebody's got to pay the bills, right? Somebody's got to provide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not everybody can spend a lot
Yeah.
of time on YouTube. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. It's been nothing but pleasure. Again, next time I promise I will come a bit more prepared, so perhaps it will be a bit more
Oh, it's all good,
intelligent.
man. It
Yeah.
was nice talking to you, man.
Thank you,
Finally.
guys. Likewise, likewise. We will get back to this conversation. I think when we do, the channel will have been started. Frankly,
Yep,
yes,
sounds good, man. Hey,
yeah,
shoot me a message on Insta.
always. Yes, thanks for doing it, man.
All
See
right,
ya.
sounds good. Hey,
Thank you.
take care and stay safe.
I will.
Seriously,
Thank
stay
you.
safe.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
man.
Bye bye. Take care.